Yes, guys, what is going on? Welcome back to the Adapt Performance Podcast, and it is the first one of 2023. Yeah, there we go. First one of 2023. Had a little bit of I nearly said vacation then, a little bit of time away over December. So I had a training camp with the mountain bikers in South Africa at the start of December, so I didn't get any podcasts recorded there because I was in the thick of it. And then it was basically Christmas. You know, all the week leading into Christmas was mad hectic, and then Christmas itself was a really nice time to step away and chill out, and see family, go to some weddings, that type of thing. So yeah, this is the first one, and it was sick. I always say it's sick because I genuinely do enjoy all the conversations I have. I generally try not to get dickheads on here, and I think I've done another good one here. What we've got is Neil Gallagher. Okay, so Neil Gallagher, he will basically get into who he is and what he does and all that, but he is one of the guys who I work with online. So he's one of my online Adapt athletes. I've been working with Neil for a year and a half, which has been sick. Time's flown, actually. And I'm not just saying this because I coach him, but Neil is an absolute beast through and through, and he's pretty much always been a beast since I've known him. We've definitely made him beastier and faster and stronger and more robust and all that good shit. Anyway, so what we actually get into in the episode, why I wanted to get Neil on, one, he is a personal trainer, a coach. So he definitely has a lot of little nuggets to take away in this episode around training and prioritizing life and all those things. So be on the lookout for that. But he's also a gym owner. Okay, so he's a gym owner. He owns a gym in Stockport, Pyramid Performance. And I'll go on record and I'll say this in the podcast. I'll say it again. It's one of the best gyms I've ever trained at. Okay, the vibe, the culture, the equipment, the space, everything about it just seems to be, I just love it. I'm super jealous that he's got the place. So I want him to just give me it, and then we'll be fine. Yeah, so the first half of this podcast we spend talking around the gym ownership space, so how he got into it, some of the challenges he's had, how he's navigated those things. Selfishly for me, because I'd love to have a space in the long run, and I'm not naive to the fact that it's going to be challenging. You're going to need some help along the way, and I think Neil would be one of those people that would just help me. So I use this as a little bit of research, okay, and you're just kind of following along for the conversation. We get into how he manages to train like an athlete, playing rugby, doing the 4 or 5 sessions that I program in a week. He's got twins, he's running a gym, is a partner, who's doing all these things. Okay, so how does he manage to excel in all these different areas amongst the chaos that is life? Okay, so we do get into that. So what I want to do, I'm not going to chew your ear off for any longer. Let's get into the podcast. This is me and Neil Gallagher. Yes, mate, how are we doing?
Not too bad. Got that cup of tea swallowed before that recording started.
First 5 seconds, just see you spluttering everywhere. That'd be a dream. When you take a drink and it goes down the wrong hole, you spend the next 30 minutes just choking. Everyone thinks you're dying.
I don't think it would make for good lessons. Yeah, good. Boys all dropped off at nursery. Tuesday mornings usually. Admin, fairly quiet morning. So try and get the dog out for a walk if this rain backs off a little bit.
Yeah, mate, I don't know if you can hear it, but it's pounding against my window now. Woke me up at
same
6
here.
a.m. Yeah, it's a strong one. How old are the boys?
They will be 3 in a couple of weeks.
Twins?
Yes, yeah.
Twins, yeah. Did you know that was going to be the case? Did you know ahead of time? Or?
Yeah, we'd been for an early scan. Emma and I we'd been through a few miscarriages and things that got there, unfortunately. So we were there, and we had. I've got a photo of it. I'll send it to you sometime after the podcast. But it was one of my favorite photos. Poor Emma was dead stressed out. She didn't want to look at the screen. She just wanted to be told that everything was okay. And I'm looking at the screen, and all I can see is 2 little blinking white lights. And I didn't know for sure, but I've had a really strong suspicion of what that, the 2 different lights meant. Yeah. The lady's trying to get her to look at the screen, and all the colours probably draining out of my face at the time. So we found out quite early. So we were able to attempt to prepare, and then find out obviously when they arrived that all that preparation was next to useless.
Yeah, it's mad. It's all my friends at the moment. Well, I say all my friends, but I've got a lot of friends as I'm getting a little bit older that are having kids now. Buggy, who came to the Strength and Speed Day that we did last year, he's just
Oh
had a
yeah.
kids. He's had one kid.
Oh, I've
One
seen that.
kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, Finley is mate. He's so cute. Um, yeah, so all the boys went round last week. We had a curry. We all met him. Yeah, it was good. It seems like it's a new chapter in my life where everyone's kind of going into parenthood.
Oh, that's the start of it now. It can just be one after the other now.
Yeah, same with weddings, mate. I feel like I've never been to a wedding other than like 2 years ago, and I feel like I've just had about 7 on the bounce. Which is, I hate wearing suits. It's just proper uncomfortable. Like trousers, mate. Oh, trousers are the worst. I hate it.
Oh, it's ridiculous. I think anybody who trains kind of feels the same thing.
Yeah.
You just have to go and get find yourself a good tailor.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Right then, mate. So, give us a quick introduction, mate. Who are you? Why are you here?
All right. Well, I'm Neil. I am a co-owner of Pyramid Performance in Stockport. We are I suppose we're more of a strength and conditioning style facility than your average kind of Globo gym. We try to cater to mostly general population, but we do have some high performance clients, some basically people who want to do train for performance, who want to train to feel better, and just want to have training as part of their life in something that's a little bit more personal than somewhere like a Pure Gym or even a David Lloyd or something like that.
Mm-hmm. I think just from my just from my experience of coming down and seeing it, I've said this to you multiple times as well. I feel like it's once a week I'll message you saying I'm so jealous that you've got that gym. I'll go on record and say like I genuinely feel like that is one of the best places I've ever trained. You know, it's sick, mate. I think you've absolutely smashed it from the equipment standpoint and just the general vibe. And I know a lot of the coaches you've got there as well, so there just seems to be a super high quality. So yeah, mate, proper jealous, which is obviously one of the reasons I've got you on here, because I feel like whether you've landed at this point by accident, I'm sure you haven't, but there's going to have been steps and there's going to have been things that you kind of went through to land at this position. So yeah, mate, absolutely love the place.
You'd be surprised. There's a lot more kind of, I think, accident about it than you might think about it in the first place.
Yeah. Do you think could you ever see yourself opening up a second facility? Would that ever be on the horizon, or is it like one's enough, one's too much?
I don't know. We're kind of at a phase now where we're not quite as big as we want this facility to be, but we're very, very close to that. So it would be a case, I think, initially we'd look at maybe expanding our current place rather than branching out into a second place. But it's all kind of up in the air, kind of seeing where it would go.
Is it? So is that like this? I don't know what it's a big unit. Do you call it? It's not a warehouse type unit. Is it? What's like the? I don't know how you'd kind of describe it.
I mean, warehouse is probably the best way to describe it, I think.
Yeah, warehouse.
Yeah. So
Go
our landlord owns the entire row of buildings. So we've kind of had talks with him, and we've had about whether we could take over some of the unit next door, so that we could just basically knock through a wall and actually become, a bigger space. Also, as well, like you've been in where the changing rooms are at the back. We've looked into maybe creating like a mezzanine floor, so that you could maybe move all your cardio kit sort of up there, and then it would just increase the amount of floor space you have down below. But yeah, there's a few different options that we're kind of looking at. But yeah, most of them would all be expanding the current space, and also like looking out for other potential venues. If ever we did decide that this wasn't big enough for us, or wasn't fitting what we needed and needed to move somewhere bigger and better.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's probably the next step rather than a second facility.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I completely forgot about the options of mezzanine. I feel like there's quite a few places in Sheffield, because when was it, over the Christmas holiday, when all my like regular gyms were closed, I kind of went on a little bit of a tour, just doing day passes. I quite like training at different gyms. It's nice just seeing what they do and how they've kind of structured things. But yeah, it seems like mezzanine seems to be like a really popular option, providing that structurally it works for the place.
Yeah. Because again, like a mezzanine floor, obviously there's significant costs involved in that, but you're not suddenly taking on a bigger lease because you're taking over, the unit next door or anything like that. So at least it all fits. It's only one extra cost rather than kind of the extra cost of opening up a whole new area.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's cool. So in terms of getting big, so would you say you're kind of at capacity then? You're kind of in that middle ground. You could take on more, but not too many more. Where are we kind of at with that?
So we're kind of approaching that capacity. We've always sort of figured we want kind of 200 members there or thereabouts, because anything more than that, I think, would start to fill the space too much and kind of lose what we opened the gym for in the first place. That you'd lose some of the space. You'd be waiting for kits and things like that. At the minute, we're probably sitting around. I haven't checked it this week. We've had, obviously, with it being January, we have had a couple of sign-ups, but we're sitting around the 180 mark. Okay. So there's room for another handful of clients. But we're not looking for scores and scores more. It's getting to that kind of stage, and then, what do we do with it then? When it's not necessarily in a growth phase. It's about kind of maintaining that and trying to make it better for everybody that comes.
Nice. How long have you been open?
5 years actually this week.
Okay.
We opened on the 7th of January, nice. 5 years ago.
And this was the same facility as I know it then?
Yeah, more or less. A couple of, just different equipment upgrades, but yeah, more or less the same facility.
Exactly. Yeah, I wasn't sure if you started off in like a smaller unit and then you've kind of transitioned across. So this has always been your home then. So talk to me about the start then. So obviously it's a big place, and I imagine the overheads are, substantial in a way. So what did it kind of look like before? Was it similar? Was it just more open space, less equipment, or have you just gradually got better equipment as you've gone? What's the play there?
So while this has kind of always been my home, previously my business partner James had a gym which was a smaller unit, and I worked for him there. That unit essentially got the whole building got turned into flats, so we were kind of pushed out. And at that point, me and James had sat down, had a discussion. We decided to kind of go into business together so that we could open somewhere bigger and better, rather than having kind of like leaving it in James's control and having like a sideways move into a very similar place. Mm-hmm. So we were basically looking, and without wanting to be too mean to the council or anything, but they were next to useless. I think I told you about this before. I think it's one of like it made James, my business partner, almost like apoplectic whenever he came back to it, because we were kind of pushed out. The council said that they would help us find new premises, so we were given like a liaison there, and provided them with a load of details of what kind of our budget was going to look like, what we kind of needed from the space and all this. And they came back, and we were coming back with places that were, they just weren't going to fit at all unless we kind of drastically changed our business model. Mm-hmm. But they came back, they came back with this one unit, and it was incredible. So it was a brand new building. It was probably about maybe a little bit bigger than the unit we're currently in, but it had air conditioning. It had had underfloor heating. It had already a mezzanine floor put in. It had rooms that could really easily be converted into change rooms. It was amazing, and so we looked at it, and then they said, so this is what the rent would be. And the rent was, I think it was 7 times what our budget was. And we were just like, why are you showing us this? What, yeah, it's got everything else. I get that, but you know, you've got to understand you're wasting your time showing somebody that's something that's 7 times their budget.
For
Um,
sure.
so eventually, so we actually we just started looking ourselves, and James um, seen a to let on our unit, contacted the letting agent, and they were like, no, they won't even consider it. They wouldn't even talk to you. They wouldn't be interested at all. And
Because it's
we
a
were just a
unit.
bit stubborn about it. Yeah. So it was
Okay.
actually previously it was a like a fiberglass boat building place. So it was just a big empty space, where essentially they built boats.
Mhm.
Um, but James sort of popped in, knocked on the door and said, would he be able to talk to the landlord directly? And luckily for us, the landlord's son runs a business next door,
Okay.
so we talked to him, and they were more than happy to talk to us. The letting agent was completely wrong about that.
Mm.
And basically it went from there. So we were able to kind of strip the place completely empty, completely bare, and have like a really sort of just start from scratch. Built the
Yeah.
change rooms at the back, built the toilets at the front. Everything from absolute scratch.
Was this a obviously? Tell me to fuck off with this question. So the initial startup of like the equipment and everything, like, because mate, I'm clearly super open with this. I want a gym one day, and I want a sick gym, and I want the type of
Yeah,
gym that you've got. Like, what are we talking as like an initial investment if we kind of take rent off the table or whatever? Because I imagine is it like a month and a month in hand or something like that? I don't know if you sign into a lease. How does that kind of work?
yeah. So basically, we're signed into a lease over 5 years. So we're actually in the middle of kind of renegotiating that. So there's a couple of things with the building that we want sorted before we sign up again and so on. But yeah, so we signed into a lease, which obviously involved like a first and last month's rent kind of thing, paid in advance.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but but yeah, apart from that, in terms of initial equipment, it was I don't know if I have the exact figures, but essentially a we didn't want to have an outside investor if we could
Mm-hmm.
avoid it. So
Yeah.
we've basically managed to. So we were moving house at the time, so I was able to take some of the money from the flat that I lived in and had sold, and take some of that and invest it into the business. And then James had basically got some from his savings and things like that. There, sort of scrimping, saving, borrowing off family,
Mm.
all those kind of things to get the initial bit. So in terms of like equipment and stuff altogether, you're probably talking 20 to 25, I think it was, with the initial fit out.
Yeah.
Um,
Is that
so
floored as well?
yeah, so that was kind of everything. So we really kind of scrimped and saved as best we could, and got. I think initially we got everything we thought we needed, and nothing else.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing else. We had, um, so we went through Black Box because we kind of really wanted that look that they kind of had at the time. So we got the track and the floor and the rigs all from Black Box. We then had another company, and again, if you're looking for what not to do, I think you're probably talking to the right person here, because we then we got kind of our fixed resistance kit from a company. I'm not going to name them because uh, they've gone bankrupt now. We got fixed resistance kit from a company, and we did like the stupidest thing you could do, which was we made a bank transfer to pay for it. And of course, with a bank transfer, you have no financial protection, you have nothing like that there. So I think we paid like 10.5 grand on all that fixed resistance kit. And afterwards, we found out the way this business operated was that they got all their machines from China. They waited until they had enough orders to fill a shipping container, and
Mm.
only when that shipping container was full would everything come through. But quite often, what would happen is people who people would get sick of waiting, they'd get sick of the delays, and they'd pull their orders and get their money back through their credit card and chargebacks and things like that. We didn't have any of that, so we just had to hope and pray that it eventually would arrive. So about 6 months after we opened, we finally had all the bits of kit that we'd actually ordered, and it was it arrived on this little it arrived on a load of pallets. Everything arrived all at once, and you were given these pictures that were about postcard sized. No instructions, no nothing, and we basically had to spend about a week just going, okay, I think that bit goes here.
Oh, you
and
have to
then
build
putting
it.
it together, and then we had to build it all.
Mate.
Like, it was. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't it wasn't like IKEA where it was completely separate, but there was bits that could have gone onto like 3 bits of kit, and you're like, right,
Yeah.
I think this bit goes on here, and you're looking at this picture that's about the size of a postcard. No instruction booklet, no nothing. You're just looking at this one picture, trying to figure everything out. And thankfully, whenever we got it all done, we had no spare parts, and everything was the way it should have been. But yeah, that was enough to keep us going. But it was something that was the first thing that we wanted to kind of reinvest and replace whenever we got the opportunity. Because even though like a lap pull down's a lap pull down, but there was things like like the pulley system you could see had got slightly bent on the way across. But again, we had no real recourse because this business was, as we discovered afterwards, was a bit fly by night, and they'd kind of packed in, and they're now open again under a different name. And actually, seeing as it's been 5 years, I imagine they're under maybe even a third name by now. So if you are opening a gym, look out for that. But yeah, so everything was fine, but it was just fine. I don't think any athletes would have noticed. I don't think any of our clients would have noticed, but we noticed, and we wanted it to be better. So our first kind of major reinvestment was swapping that out for the hammer strength stuff that we've currently got.
Nice. And I guess the other side of this is, we obviously had COVID in the middle as well. Well, I guess it was kind of bang in the middle for you, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much. So I don't think it was ideal for anybody. But we were to be honest, we were really lucky, and I say it to members all the time about how grateful we are for them, because I think one of the big benefits of being a smaller, community style gym, where you have a much smaller membership base, where there is a lot more kind of face-to-face contact with members and things like that, is you do create those relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And we were really lucky because we shut down bit by bit, so we, initially, I'm sure you remember, like, class sizes had to be limited, and then you weren't allowed to do classes indoors, and then you weren't allowed to do classes at all, and just sort of stage by stage. So we did sort of what we could for as long as we could. So we had a situation where we actually set up pods outdoors in the car park. Yeah. So every morning, we'd go out, we'd set up 3 of those like big awnings that you can get, those like just like a tent cover.
Yeah, like a barbecue.
Set that up. You drag out. You drag out. Barbells, plates. A rower in this one, a bike in this one, ski erg in the last one, and essentially people would be able to book those throughout the day. We'd clean them down, all like. But then eventually we weren't allowed to do any of that, and we had to move kind of fully online. And we were really, really lucky, because a lot of our members were in jobs where they kept working. So lots in the NHS, lots in that, lots of ones who weren't furloughed, and lots of them reached out to us and said, that, the online stuff wasn't for them, but they were still going to keep paying their membership. Yeah. And that's, to be honest, if they hadn't have done that, I don't think we'd still be open today. So we are really, really grateful to them for that.
Yeah, for sure. I think
Um,
the smaller style gym kind of breeds that little bit of a mentality, doesn't it? Everyone takes a shared ownership over that space and wants to see that space succeed. And it's not like,
yeah,
you know, I don't know, Sarah, who works for the NHS, is then paying straight into it's not going into your ass pocket as Neil, it's going into the gym to actually keep the roof over your head. Like,
yeah,
and, but, I know when COVID happened, I stopped my gym membership for I think I was at a Pure Gym at the time. I'm like, well, I'm not that
yeah.
bothered. It's different. It's a different mentality. No, that's sick. So, what's the pull for you then? Owning a gym. Why have you decided to do this? What do you feel like the actual benefits are for you? Because I speak to people around, I guess, the self-employed side of things. I have a few friends that are in full-time employment and are kind of teasing with the idea of, do I go self-employed? Do I freelance? And they see the self-employed side as being really risky, which it all has risk. It all has risk.
Oh
But
yeah, absolutely.
I see the gym ownership side as like one step along that. You've got full-time, more secure, self-employed, a little bit less secure, but ultimately okay. And I guess you're the furthest one along that spectrum, having a space. So what's your
Yeah.
thoughts for that?
I think it was just for me. It was the opportunity to kind of influence the bigger picture on some of those things. So we've got like a whole host of like strength based classes. Where we basically work off a template for kind of 2 months. And like with any training template, not everybody's doing the exact template. Everyone's got, some person can't do back squats, so they're doing goblet squats or front squats or something instead. But, you know, generally, people are, doing a squat and a press, and then they're doing a hinge and a row of some
Mm-hmm.
variation, and building strength over those 2 months. And that idea to kind of be able to influence that on the, I suppose, on the kind of like the macro scale, being able to kind of influence that for everybody who comes to those strength classes rather than just working with individual clients, who come in and do personal training with me. Because like I'm really, really lucky. I say it all the time. I grew up playing sports, and still I still play sport, and I think it's one of those that being able to share that kind of vibe with people in a gym environment, for people who don't necessarily want to play organized sports or, don't have the time, but to be able to have that kind of community and have that kind of ethos of not just spinning your wheels, of actually training to get better, to get stronger, to get fitter, to get, whatever your goal is, to be able to influence that. That was my kind of, and still is my kind of big driver.
Yeah, your main reason why. What has there been anything along this process then over the 5 years that's kind of been your biggest battle, I guess? And it might be, we might have already spoke about it with it being COVID. Like, has that been the thing? But I said at the beginning how I genuinely do fit. I love the space because everyone trains right. You've got the good coaches there. There's just a good feel, And I've been in places where it's the complete opposite. They've got the facility, which is amazing. It's state of the art. They've got this look about them, very kind of Globo gym, like you said
Yeah.
before. But you just feel tension and you feel almost like negativities in the walls. So, what have been some of your challenges getting to this point where you're at then?
So, like COVID was probably the biggest one, biggest of all. But to be honest, the biggest challenges we've had really is for James and me are just our admin is not our biggest strong suit. So we've got coaches who work with us, and they've just got, they've got files, they've got, they've got like their tablet, and every program is listed perfectly, and it's just, it seems to come so easy to them,
Mm,
which is great. But, you've got myself and James, who are very much like pen and paper, and we have to work really, really hard on the organization thing. It doesn't necessarily come easy to us to be that organized, so we have to work really, really hard at it. And I think just being really consistent with that organization sometimes is a struggle, because if
yeah.
you ever, if ever you do slack off and think, oh, I'll do that next week. Suddenly, you've got a stack of like 20 different things to do and they're all due tomorrow.
Yeah.
And you're like, right, that's a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's, I think, just the general organization kind of things, because it's the same. I think it's the same things that you would have as a self-employed PT. It's just taken up a level, because you've got, the classes to prepare for, as well as your PT clients. And even though the PT clients are, for me, bring in most of my kind of take home money,
Yeah.
the classes are not, like, it's not passive income, but it's a really, really important part of that income, that
Yeah.
it still needs that work, it still needs that attention, and
Mm-hmm.
just making sure that I do it with as much urgency as I do the sort of personal training style. I think
For
it's just
sure.
not having that single person to answer to in a class
Yeah.
almost pushes it down that list a little bit for me. Like, it always gets done,
Mm-hmm.
but it sometimes is done, in the days before it should be done.
Yeah. Yes, guys, hope you're well. Hope you are enjoying this episode of the Adapt Performance podcast. So I just want to take a few minutes just to talk to you about the Adapt online strength and conditioning service. All right. So as of recording, okay, so what are we on? We are on the 10th of January right now. Okay. We have 3 spots available for online strength and conditioning coaching with Adapt. Okay. Our retention with Adapt is really, really good. Okay. So we do not put these slots out very often, because as you'll kind of hear in this podcast with Neil, when we work with people, we generally work with them for a long period of time, or until they've achieved that identified goal or rehab or anything like that. Okay. So if you are an athlete that is looking to take guesswork out of your training, okay, get rid of it, make sure everything has got a reason, and allow it to kind of work around your training schedule, your lifestyle, all that good stuff, give us a shout. Okay. We are professionals. It's what we do for a living. Our objective is to make you better athletes. Okay. So on top of the actual great coaching service, and I'm not afraid to say that, you used to feel really weird about saying that Adapt was sick. But you know what? I'm super proud of it. On top of the actual great coaching, you get a shed load of resources. Okay, we're talking physiotherapy, we're talking psychology, nutrition, all the resources in the world that's going to be geared towards you maximizing your training performance. Okay, and just ticking those 1% boxes along the way. So if you are interested in the online Adapt strength and conditioning service, give us a shout. We've got 3 spots. They will go quick, and then likely that the next intake will not happen for a long, long while. All right, cool. Any questions, give us a shout. Let's get back into the episode with Neil. I guess that organization thing as well, like, everyone works totally different, don't they? And I've got friends that are, they've got a to-do list and everything gets done the night before, and they're tick, 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 and they've got it. They're in a situation where they fold and they iron the socks and the boxers and all that stuff, and it's just not happening for me. I can't do it. I don't have the mental, fortitude to be bothered. But I know that stuff will happen. I'll get stuff done on time. And that's, what I think you mentioning that around organization is probably one of the things I've had to work at the most as well in the self-employed side. Stuff always gets done, but there's definitely, I'll find myself almost focusing on the wrong things. That's kind of my angle. Sometimes I'm like stressing over a program that's due in 3 weeks when I've got one that's due tomorrow. So it's like, it's obvious things that, you kind of get the blinkers on sometimes. And that's my personal work on that. Hopefully I'm getting better at, but it's difficult.
Yeah, I think that's probably a really good way of describing it. You get the blinkers on, and you're getting like miles ahead with one particular piece of work, while you're just letting some of the other things like stack up that should be done a bit more urgently, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's like things are always getting done. You're always like progressing, but I suppose, just deep down somewhere, I know that there are more efficient ways to do it if it was more organized.
Yeah, for sure. So shifting gear then, right? So another reason I wanted to get you on, because you're a personal trainer, you're a coach, you're a gym owner, you're a dad, but you're also a really good athlete. Okay, so you're spinning plates
Yeah, I
right
don't know
now.
about really good.
Well, you're an athlete. We'll go there. We'll go there.
I'll take that.
Yeah, you'll take it. So you're spinning plates, okay? But I think from me, working with you and kind of assisting with the programming and the coaching side of things is you tick the boxes. You get shit done and you make it happen. How have you landed at this point where you're managing to do it? And I guess this is the other side of things. Maybe this is a front. Maybe I see one bit of it. I don't see the behind the scenes. I don't see you stressing to get the kids ready in the morning. I'm not sure. What's your thoughts?
I think in the last sort of couple of years, I've really started to see kind of the benefits of, and I know it sounds so silly whenever it's something that I spend my life telling people and showing people how good exercise can be for them and how good, it is, from a mental health perspective, is that I feel so much more like on edge and unprepared and and just unhappy, I suppose, if I'm not getting that kind of training in or activity of some description in. So I just find myself having making time for it. And I've trained with you now for what, a year and a half, bit longer.
Yeah.
Where you'll have seen the bigger picture. I do my best, and I think I am actually pretty good at getting my sessions in and getting things done. But there are quite a few sessions where of 8 lifts, I might do 4 of those lifts, and then that's all I've got time for. And as long as I know that I've put it in for those 4 lifts and got that done, fine. I've made my peace with that. I know there is sometimes I'm leaving gains on the table, but I'm not chasing those gains at the expense of everything else. Then, so it's fighting kind of where to make sacrifices. So I found even in the last couple of months, we've been trying to prioritize sleep a little bit more. So as a result, one of the things that me and my wife do is sit down and watch TV together. A new series of Happy Valley has started.
Hey, it's on. Yeah, we've had it on this morning.
So that's kind of it. Sunday night, both of us were just just going to go upstairs, read and go to bed. At 9:15, because neither of us, because we're just busy weekend. So it was just absolutely knackered. But it was just right, let's just get some more sleep. We'll watch it later in the week. Whenever the boys are in bed, you can watch it on iPlayer, and it's obviously it's at a more sociable time. So you're just sort of sacrificing that in the short term. That's just one small example, but really kind of outlining where the priorities are, I suppose, just makes it easier for me to try and tick those boxes and tick them on a regular basis.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of, if you don't have that awareness of where you kind of want to invest your energy, you just get pulled in a lot of different directions all at the same time, and then it doesn't give you a plan of action for when things do pop up. I had a guy on the podcast pretty early on. He's called Gary Hutt. He's the S&C coach at GB Boxing. And he kind of caught me off guard, actually, because it's not a conversation I'd ever really had with people. But we were on about your priority list of how you approach your life. And I'm trying to remember exactly how it went, but I'm not a parent. And I said something along the lines of, your kids are your number one priority. And he threw it back at me and went, well, if you're dead and you're not taking care of yourself and you're a bad parent to be around, then what kind of example are you setting for the kids? And it's kind of that aeroplane analogy of, put your own life mask, your own gas mask on before you put your kids on.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a super interesting thing that I'd never had to have really considered it. But I do think, like you said, having a little bit of an idea of where your priorities fall, where can you bend a little bit? Because you said before around, if you only get 4 lifts of the 8 lifts in, that's good for you. And I'd echo that as well. I think there's certain people that I train at the moment where, if life throws them a little bit of a deload, I'm like, fucking, yeah, sound. Like, that's a good thing because you train hard
Yeah,
pretty much year round. You've got probably a relatively busy life with owning the gym, having kids, all those types of things, and you play rugby. If you only get a 30-minute session in, sound. Like, it is not going to matter in the grand scheme of things.
yeah. So yeah, so it is like creating those priorities, and that is, something I find as well. Like you're saying with Gary saying about having to kind of take care of yourself first of all, because if I haven't slept, if I haven't trained, you know, I find myself, being like much more, short tempered, and I can find myself getting irritated quicker and things like that, and obviously as parents, you do your best to not pass that on to other, like to the boys, but you know, it's so much easier to not do that if I've taken care of myself first.
Yeah.
And sometimes obviously like with twin 2 year olds, that's taken out of my choice. Like if they're up sick overnight, that you just have to deal with these things, and you don't have necessarily a good couple of days. But
Yeah.
if you're trying to do the right things or prioritize most of the time, it
Mm.
makes things much better, much easier in the longer term,
Yeah, yeah. This
or at
this
least.
goes back to one of the posts I saw you put up a while ago around. I might get the numbers wrong here. The 10-80-10 rule. Remember that of
Oh yeah, 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 yeah,
mate, sick. You know what? And I can remember reading it years and years ago. And I think I read it on T Nation, and I couldn't remember who said it. And you said it was Paul Carter that kind of where you got that
yeah.
from. Yeah, so it
Yeah,
might have
so
been
I think
Paul
that I think
Carter.
basically that's where I read it too. It's just on from Paul Carter on T Nation.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So talk to us a little
it
bit
does.
around
It's
the
like
10-80-10 rule then, for people that don't know.
um, so I think the longer and longer and more consistently I train, the more I realize it's true. So you get 10% of your sessions are going to be kind of absolute dog shit. You're going to go in and you're just going to feel tired. Your legs are going to feel heavy. Everything's going to feel 10 times harder than it normally does. And it's just, you feel like you're just wasting your time. Your warm up weights are, burying you, and you're just like, what the fuck am I doing here? This is shit.
Mm-hmm.
You then kind of have, the 80% of your sessions are, okay to good. So they're productive. You're ticking the boxes. Everything's kind of chugging along nicely. And that's where the majority of your training is spent. And I find that for the like vast majority of my training, I'm doing okay. I'm ticking the boxes. Everything's, you know, squats are getting heavier. Bench press is getting heavier. Everything's moving a bit better. It's great. But then you get, the best 10%, is the days you just come in and you just feel everything is just moving perfectly. You feel like you're rested well. You feel like you're explosive. You feel like you're strong. And, those are the ones where you can really kind of push things.
You're
But
a
knowing that,
superhero.
yeah, that's it. That's what it feels like. But knowing that that's kind of the structure of your sessions overall, it makes it so much easier to actually keep training
Mm-hmm.
when you feel like shit. Like because you know that, yeah, it's going to happen every now and again, but you've at least ticked the box and you're closer to getting better to back to a good session again.
Yeah, it's an expectations thing, isn't it? And it's the process of lifting. It's the process of sports performance in general. And I think these are the things that are super important for new trainers, new people that are getting into lifting. It's important for them to know because if you have a shit session when you're not aware that you are going to have shit sessions, it can be really disruptive. It can be a big knock to the ego, a big knock to your confidence, and that could be one of the things that kind of causes people to fall off. Um, so
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
always
absolutely.
try and push that forward and let them know. I go back to one of my first personal training clients I had at a gym. So when did I got my PT qual when I was 18. So we did like this year-long course where it was a sports therapy course. You got your PT qual, your gym instructor, and you got your Swedish and sports massage. So I was 18, probably been lifting for probably like 2 days, to be honest with you, like before I got the qual, which is mad in itself. Um,
Yeah, yeah.
graduated or whatever it is, got the qual, had my first PT client, and probably first time he's ever been in the gym. I ended up doing the latest thing that I was reading about, gym and volume training. Let's get this bastard strong as shit with 10 sets of 10. He's never moved in his life. Obviously, not the
Yeah.
greatest decision I've ever made in my life. I'm not proud of it. But I can remember seeing him like a week later, he'd missed a PT session. And I was like, "Hi, mate, you all right? I'm seeing you last week." He was like, "Yeah, so I've actually been I had to go to the hospital." I was like, "Why? What's wrong?" He was like, my whole body was just super sore. And I went to the hospital because I'd never felt like that pain before. I went, okay. And he started going through it. And essentially he had DOMS. He was just sore
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
exercise, but he'd never moved before. And that was kind of my first lesson of like, just because I know what exercise feels like, I know what sport feels like, not everybody does. And he wasn't injured. He didn't have a disease or anything like that. He just had a bit of soreness. And to be fair, I've nearly gone to A&E when I've had leg DOMs before as well. Hamstrings are the worst. But yeah, that was a quite an eye opener, and a big lesson for me initially was, talking through these things, because not everyone's aware that's not in the industry.
Yeah. It's tough. You learn, you know, like how to speak to other coaches, and then how to speak to how to speak to clients at kind of any level. And I think if you don't do that, and if you aren't able to kind of communicate those things across, you're gonna lose out because of it. And if somebody just needs to know that, like, a bench press is, that you lie back and the bar comes down to your chest and comes back to straight arms, that's fine. That's a place to start. You can talk about, getting your lats engaged and getting leg drive and getting on arch and shoulder width grip and everything there. But if this is somebody who's come in and for the very first time, as long as they're lifting safely, you know, you can build on that and you can introduce more and more,
Mm-hmm.
you know, as they require it. But like you say, if you throw in like German volume training or like occlusion training or, whatever it's straight off, which, like, again, I've been as guilty of as anybody. When you start out, you want to show off how much of an expert you are,
Mm-hmm.
and I think, looking at my training plans, I think you and me have quite a very similar ethos now. It's about really just stripping back and you know, doing the bare minimum to drive that progress, and sometimes, yeah, that there's a bit of complexity to that, but it's still, even when it's complex, it's the most simple version of that complexity that you can get.
Mate, and
And I think,
that's such an important thing, and I'm trying to think of who the quote said. It's something like Theodore Roosevelt, and he writes, "If I had more time, I would have written a shorter speech." And it takes a lot of work to make something that's really complex super simple and really concise. And that's something that probably takes the majority of my time, I think, is like, okay, this is what I want. This is the long term, but how do I boil that back down to where we are? But I'm
yeah,
glad you said that, because we get mad results. And you're one of the people that I think it's easy to speak to about it, because our programming is, for the most part, super simple. We sprint, we jump, we do the big compound lifts. The compound lifts, we progress super slowly. We tick the boxes every single week, every single session, and we do the same lifts for probably, I don't know, 6 months, 12 months, whatever.
yeah,
And you end up super fucking strong because of it. Like, and you're a physical beast because of that thing. And I think that's, for me, because we've both invested in it, but we're clear on what the outcome is getting better, and I think that's
yeah,
important. If the outcome is getting better, then cool, you've got the plan, you go with it. There's some people, and I'm one of these people sometimes, where I'm like, you know what, getting better is definitely the goal, but I also want entertaining a little bit. I want to enjoy training, in which case some of the decisions you make are like, you know what, I'm going to do a little bit of this, even though it might not be 100% in line with that goals. And that's fine, because we're human beings and we like to
yeah,
float around.
yeah. I like, almost, yeah, almost with every one of my clients, that I work with, I tend to have, the first, 4 or 5 lifts in any session are, are pretty static. in their program, so they'll be in there for, a couple of months at a time, different rep ranges and things like that and different tempo stuff. But if back squats are in there, they'll be in there for a few months. But
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to actual sessions, the last 20 minutes is, for me, it's a lot more fluid. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
right, I know we need to do some form of, I know we need to get sort of the triceps and chest doing some form of work, but whether we do, flies and rope pull downs or whether we, do a set of dips, it's kind of up in the air. It's just to see, as long as they're getting some form of stimulus there, that's fine because they've already done the main lifts. They've ticked
Mm-hmm.
those boxes, and now we're just looking to get that stimulus in there, which gives us, like, I suppose it's because I'm not necessarily going in as in depth as so strength and conditioning. It gives me that little bit more freedom towards the end, so you can have that little bit more variety without being one of those coaches that goes and does a completely different session every single time somebody comes in.
Yeah. 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 No, I agree. I think it ultimately comes down to the person you've got in front of you, doesn't it? And knowing who they are and knowing what kind
Yeah.
of makes them tick. I have clients at the moment that, we've probably been doing the same session for variations of it for months and months and months. And we just have conversation as we're going through. And, the coaching points are minimal sometimes, but we know that it's aligned. And then I also have clients where I am that coach, where I'm like, what, I know that you want a little bit of a beast in at the end of the session, and we do that, and it's nice. We're aware of that. So,
Yeah.
final thing I want to touch on, Neil. So you play in rugby then. So you play in good level rugby. You train hard. What are the boys that you train with? Are you sensing that they're as invested in the training process as you are? Do all the boys lift? Are they kind of athletes in that
Um,
sense, or are they more about just rugby?
I think it's, there's a real mix. I think with any rugby team like that like at our level, I'd say about probably about half the first team, will do some form of lifting at the gym as well. A couple of the guys, actually train with me, as their personal trainer, at the gym. So I know that they are invested in that side of things.
Yeah.
Um, the other half is kind of a mix of guys who just want to come down and play rugby on a Saturday. Um, and some of them will do some training, but not necessarily geared towards rugby or anything like that. It's just some like athletic style training and things like that. And rugby's like just a hobby on the side. So
Mm.
there's a huge mix across the team and across the club really.
Yeah. Do you feel that 'cause you've been playing rugby a while, right? How many years?
Um, so I've been playing for the Spartans now for, I think this is my eighth season with them, so that'll be a decade because we weren't able to play during COVID.
Yeah.
Which seems,
Yeah.
my God, that seems like a long time.
Yeah. Do you feel like the mentality is always kind of the same then? Do you? Because I'm not around that team, I'm not around that culture all the time. Do you feel like it is kind of the same? Like rugby boys will be rugby boys. You get half and half. Some that are bothered about just looking good, and that's great. And then you've got some people that just want to play rugby. Some people that want to be an athlete. Is it kind of always similar, or do you feel like there's a gradual switch in one direction over the other?
Um, no, I think it's always fairly similar. But what we've had this last couple of years with our coach is she's basically kind of sat us down and give us all like a little bit of a questionnaire, and she's basically said that there's no right answer or wrong answer, about what we want from the game, and if we just wanted, if the majority of people just wanted to play rugby on a Saturday, we'd just find a way to play and have fun. But the
Mm,
majority of kind of the majority of the first team, you know, we want to win, and we're chasing promotion, with that, and we're sitting second in the league at the minute, big good win at the weekend, and I think even the guys who are only necessarily training to to look good or anything and just play rugby on a Saturday. I think it's stepped up their efforts a little bit more towards rugby, and that there's a little bit more of a focus on fitness in general.
Yeah.
Because the team is kind of committed to that. So even though it's not necessarily their personal, ambition, they still want to push on. They still want to try and win. And to be honest, that's the way, like, I was always raised. You play, you just give your best. You try to win everything. Like, obviously, if you lose, you lose with you lose with a bit of grace, and you're not a dick about the whole thing. But I can't imagine, especially a game like rugby, I can't imagine going into a game of rugby and not wanting to win the game. I don't think it's a game that you can really play half-arsed,
Yeah, for sure. I think I had a conversation with a lad the other day about S&T for him, and this was interesting. And he's probably one of those people that just enjoys rugby. That's it. He just enjoys having a little knock around with the lads. He loves the camaraderie. He loves the social side. He loves all that type. And S&T for him isn't even necessarily about being the best athlete in the world. Obviously, everyone wants to be a little bit better and do things a little bit better. But me, it's for him, it was the pure injury prevention side, or like injury reduction and just keeping the healthy body. Because he said, look, I want to play until I'm 50, 55. At this rate, if I don't start lifting, I haven't got another 2 years in me before my knees pop, And I thought that was an interesting thing around, just the longevity piece. And it's nice that people are thinking about that. In my eyes, I think that's a cool thing.
Yeah, I think social media gets an awful lot of stick, and probably for good reason, because there's an awful lot of just shit out there on social media. But I think one thing that's really good is that it's allowing coaches to actually spread the message of, that training isn't necessarily, all like, Arnold Schwarzenegger doing like calf raises with somebody sitting on his back. It's not all for everybody to have that, 70s bodybuilder look. That there is benefits to physical training, like of any description, and you just have to find the one, that works for you, and that you enjoy it, and also will help you kind of get to where you want to be. And that doesn't necessarily mean, like you say, doing something like German volume training or anything like that. But I think that information is getting more and more commonly known. Because it used to be, even like you think like a decade ago, and it's still out there. The people that come out and they say, oh, I want to lose a bit of weight, so I'm going to start running.
Yeah.
And you're there and you're trying to because there's nothing wrong with running, but to use running as a weight loss tool is probably not the smartest way of going about things. And trying to kind of tackle that misinformation, it's getting easier because the information is more kind of readily available through good coaches, like spreading things on Instagram and on Twitter and things like that.
Yeah.
But equally, there is the opposite end of the scale too.
And there always will be. There always will be. I think we were chatting about this in the gym yesterday because I had my my basketball team in, and we had the girls' side. And me and a few of the coaches were chatting about it afterwards, and we were like, "That's it was just a good session. It was just such a good vibe." And they're buzzing just to be in a gym, and these are like 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And they're looking around, and it's quite a strongman-esque gym. So you've got all the funky implements, you've got big dumbbells, and they're all trying to lift things up. And can we do this? Can we do yoke? Can we do the stones? And I'm like, yeah, sick. Like, this is such a good thing, that you're curious. So I want to feed that curiosity. I want you to be comfortable going into any place and exercising. And that's probably one of the biggest things I want them to take from these few years is, how to handle a barbell, how to set up a squat rack and all that. But that's come from social media. That's purely it's TikTok, of just workouts all the time. And there's a huge kind of gym push at the moment around female population, which is fantastic. It is a little bit more kind of geared towards the aesthetic things, at least what I see. But I think it's changing. I think it's a good thing. I think it's quality.
Yeah, absolutely. Like what's one thing that like I'm particularly proud of with our gym is that in half term and and school holidays, quite often you'll get parents will bring their kids in with them, and like Matt that I train with, just last week there was a woman that he trains. She was in doing deadlifts, and like I was just I came out of the office, and I was just heading up to the toilet, and it was great because like mum was there doing deadlifts, but just either side of the rack alongside her were her two kids. They're only 9 or 10, I think, but they were both there doing kettlebell deadlifts along with her, and like I think giving people that opportunity to be able to train, because if they weren't, if she was a member at a different gym that didn't welcome children, and said that they weren't able to come in and they weren't able to be uh, alongside you, or like in the area, maybe they had to have childcare or something like that. That's another barrier to that training. And I think as much as possible, you want to kind of remove as many of those barriers as you possibly can. And that if that means that like the kids have to come in along with you, fine. From what I've seen, she got a full session. She got a great session in with Matt that one. But even if it meant they say the kids were a little bit younger, 4 or 5, a little bit more wild, should we say, a little bit less controllable, it's still that situation where you're having probably that 10%, that shit session. It's still much better than not having done a session at all. And if you can remove those barriers, that's I think that's why we're here.
For sure, mate. No, sick. I think that's another reason I really like it. I think it's performances for everybody type of vibe. No, it's good. Yeah. It's solid. I really enjoy it. What you got on for the rest of the day, mate? You training?
Yes, I'll be training this afternoon. I've got an hour free, but I'm in the gym from midday now, so be just get myself ready. Try and take the dog, like I say, take the dog for a quick walk before I go. Get him back out again tonight.
Love it.
Lazy gets
he's
just lying here sleeping beside me.
Is he? Mate, I need a dog. Yeah. It's soon. That's I think within the year I'm getting a dog. That's it. It's happening. Whether the missus likes it or not, we're having a dog.
Do you want this arsehole? Because I will give him to you.
Do it. I'll take him. I'll adopt him. Short bench day today, is it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, the fat grip. How's the fat grip's been going?
Good. I'm finding the first couple of weeks, because this is the second block that we've had them in. The first couple of weeks was just really getting used to the balance. Because I'd be halfway through a set and then my wrist would just flick. I'm like, oh, that's going to come down on my face. But it now feels a lot more solid. A lot more I feel like I've got that position a lot more solid, a lot more the groove is where I want it to be. So I'm starting to push those weights up a little bit higher again.
Nice. I feel like I'm at a turning point with mine because I've had them in for a while. I might have had them in like a month or two longer than you've had them in.
Yeah.
I think I used a normal bar over Christmas, just when I was training with one of the lads. And mate, it felt great. It felt, I don't even know how to explain. It just felt light. Just grabbing onto a normal bar and benching it normally just felt great.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether that is the grip thing, the ability to keep it stacked and aligned, whether it's the fact that, with a normal barbell, you've got a normal range of motion. The fat grips, you have an increased range of motion. I don't know what it is, but I'm fully bought into it now. Like I'm going to ride this for a good 3, 4, 5 months, I think. And let's see where it goes for me.
Great.
Yeah, it's good shit. Enjoy it. Right then, mate. Cool. I want to wrap it up there. I just want to thank you for your time, mate. That was absolutely sick. I think there's going to be loads of value in there for people, particularly anybody that's looking to kind of get into the gym space, but anybody that just enjoys training and just chatting around training. I think I've really enjoyed this. So I appreciate your time, mate. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed it.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.